digamos, permítame decirle que no veo en el corto plazo otra definición.
Sí, Oscar Seco.
Volviendo al fomento de la exploración, con la Constitución del 94, ¿eso puede caer en el dominio de las provincias o va a ser jurisdicción nacional?
No, el proyecto, como decía recién, básicamente tiene incentivos fiscales. Dentro de los incentivos fiscales, yo diría que la mayoría de ellos caben en cabeza de la nación, porque tanto el impuesto a las ganancias, el impuesto a la renta mínima presunta, el impuesto al valor agregado son todos impuestos nacionales. Lo que cabe indudablemente en cabeza de las provincias son las regalías petroleras. El proyecto lo que prevé es un sistema de adhesión de las provincias al plan, a los efectos de, dentro de su voluntad, aporten una disminución de las regalías, que por otro lado la ley lo prevé.
Eduardo Roque, Alberto. Estoy por acá.
¿Cómo está, Eduardo?
¿Cómo ves el futuro de un bebé que aún no ha nacido, que se llama banco de datos, Alberto?
Para mí es un bebé todavía el banco de datos, digamos. Bueno, el banco de datos yo diría que va en paralelo con el plan exploratorio, ¿no? O sea, para formular un plan exploratorio en serio hay que tener la información geológica bien preparada para los inversores. Se han dado algunos pasos preliminares, digamos, en ese sentido, pero la gran discusión todavía está por verse. En la medida en que el Estado pueda tener recursos para generar este banco de datos o banco de información geológica, seguramente vamos a tratar de utilizarlos. Y si no tenemos recursos, deberemos buscar alguna forma de hacerlo. Participación privada seguramente podría ser una de ellas, ¿no?
Sí, por allá en el fondo hay más preguntas.
Sí, Gustavo Negel, informador energético. Quería saber qué novedades teníamos de la Secretaría sobre el ingreso de Petrobras al mercado de combustibles argentino.
El ingreso de Petrobras en el mercado de los combustibles argentinos en realidad proviene de una obligación de desinversión de Repsol YPF. Esta obligación de desinversión de Repsol YPF, ustedes recuerdan, viene dada a través de, digamos, de la venta de las acciones del Estado a Repsol. Es un tema que desde ese punto de vista, o sea, de la concreción, es controlado por la Secretaría de Defensa de la Competencia de la Nación y no por Energía. Desde el punto de vista, digamos, del mercado de los combustibles, bueno, nosotros lo vemos como un participante más del mercado y en este sentido nos interesa que el mercado argentino pueda tener un competidor más.
¿Hay más preguntas? Bueno, no habiendo más preguntas, le agradecemos al ingeniero Fiandesio su presentación. Y quedan 15 minutos nomás para el café y el postre, porque a las 14 horas tenemos que empezar en forma puntual.
Va completando el salón mientras permitimos el ingreso de otras personas. Déjenme hacer una breve introducción. En primer lugar, disculpar al ingeniero Lanciani, que iba a estar como moderador de esta mesa y desafortunadamente no puede estar en Buenos Aires en estos días, así que me toca el placer de tratar de reemplazarlo. Hay dos hechos en la industria del gas que están influenciando el largo plazo o el desarrollo a largo plazo, que son básicamente el consumo de gas para generación termoeléctrica en todo el mundo y el descubrimiento de importantes cantidades de reservas, ¿no? Dentro de los seminarios y congresos que organizó la SPE sección argentina en Argentina y en la región donde ha contribuido, ha sido una preocupación permanente traer el tema de los avances tecnológicos y los cambios que se producen para aprovechar aquellas reservas que no son fáciles de movilizar, ¿no? Por eso que en la organización del Congreso, el comité organizador decidió incluir una sesión de monetización de reservas. Y para eso invitamos al señor Marco Brumelhals de la firma Shell y a Rupert Menz de BP Trinidad a que den exposiciones. Yo voy a invitar mientras lo presento, a que comience la exposición Marco Brumelhals. Marco Brumelhals estudió física y obtuvo un PhD en Diffusion Process en la Universidad de Leiden. Comenzó su carrera profesional en Shell como ingeniero de reservorios en yacimientos del norte de Holanda. Luego trabajó durante casi 4 años en Shell Venezuela como Light Oil Development Asset Manager y como Development Manager en el yacimiento Urdaneta. Él recientemente está comenzando con una nueva posición basada en Buenos Aires, o sea que lo vamos a ver seguramente más seguido. Marco, cuando vos quieras.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I would like to talk a bit about the large-scale application of the gas-to-liquids plant, which in Shell we call SMDS, Shell Middle Distillate Synthesis. And I would like to show you today that it's now a commercially attractive alternative to LNG. This paper I present on behalf of Shell Gas International in London, together with Shell Capsa here in Buenos Aires. First, let me talk a couple of minutes about the driving forces for gas to liquids. The very first one is to develop remote gas resources. However, this is not the only one. It stimulates growth, economic growth and industrial growth for development in remote areas. So whilst we have economic and sustainable development, entry points to the whole thing. The last one, but certainly not the least one, is that the process creates ultra-clean transport fuels to improve, for example, the local air quality. Now, you can wonder, how does it compare to other projects? And I would like to show you a bit of the sizing on this. So if we look at it, if we look at a gas intake project of 600 million standard cubic feet per day, and let me get back to why I take this size in a minute, then alternatives to develop this gas, to turn it into liquids, are, for example, to turn it into methanol. But 600 million cubic feet per day would give you 6 million tons per annum of methanol, which is about 1/5 of the market. So it's relatively small, the market. Alternative would be to go for LNG. And typically we're talking about, let's say, a 1-train development here. So we're talking 4 million tons per annum, about 4%. However, if you do the same thing on a gas to liquids basis, then it produces 3 million tons per annum, but it's only 0.1% of the potential market. So not only do you target a different market, you also target a potentially very, very large market. Let me talk a little bit about the process setup. I mean, there's nothing magical to this process you haven't heard about before. I think the crux is in the catalyst, and we'll get back to that in a second. But the process itself consists of 3 steps. First, it's the mixing of natural gas with oxygen, a partial oxidization, which will get you syngas manufacture, or manufactured syngas. The second step is the step where you synthesize this gas into very long paraffinic chains, and this is where we get the catalyst, and I'll get back to the catalyst in a second. It's the Fischer-Tropsch process, which has been around for quite a long time. This will get very long molecules, and so in the third step we crack it down again to the final product. Naphtha, gas oil, LPG, and specialties can be mentioned. Now, this is not the only thing that's related to the process. It generates a lot of water, very clean water, and in addition, because it's an exothermic reaction, it generates about 100 megawatts of power potentially at very low cost. Maybe you should come back then also to the 600 million scfs per day I talked about before. We have one plant running, the very first plant in Bintulu, which started in 1993 and which had a scale of 12,000 barrels per day. The current thinking, and Shell is targeting this, is to increase the size of such a plant to 75,000 barrels per day, for which indeed about 600 million scfs per day in gas intake are needed. Depends, of course, somewhat on gas quality. The capex for such a development would be in the order of $1.5 billion. Now, what has changed, really, what has been improved, I think, recently, is the catalyst. We have moved to a new type of catalyst, which has been successfully tested in Bintulu, and which is proprietary cobalt. It really has a good selectivity for the higher chain lengths, and basically you see a negligible CO to CO2 conversion. If you put that into perspective, and this is basically related to the second step of this 3-step process, so we aggregate, thereafter we get the cracking still, you will see that with a probability of over 90% of chain growth, we get into the regime where a lot of wax and to some extent other products are generated, but certainly where the small chain molecules are minimized. Now, what does this do to the evolution of the cost? As I said, when we started in '93 in Bintulu, of course it had a trajectory before, because the thinking started somewhere in '87, '89, final investment decision. At the time, with the thinking, the break-even oil price would be in the order of 30 barrels per day, because the specific capex was in the order of $50,000 per barrel per day. Now, in the course of time, because of the economies of scale and optimization, this came down to about, let's say, 35,000, with break-even gas prices, well, in the order of break-even oil price, in the order of the numbers we're seeing today, maybe a little bit lower. Now, with this new catalyst, we're actually moving further down the curve. So we're somewhere around here, where it now makes sense, economic sense, to execute this process at values of about $14 to $15 per barrel. So you see that's about half of the initial price. And actually, we're looking at further improvements to this process with new catalysts being suggested and executed. If we turn to the products then for a second, I would like to say something on marketing options. Now, there are basically 2 distinct possibilities. The first one is that the product itself is blended with current products, and I'll concentrate on gas oil as an example. What it does is it increases the values of your existing pool of products, and the emissions will go down, because as I will try and show you, this is a very extremely clean product. I mean, it doesn't contain any sulfur. In general, the CETA numbers for the products are very high compared to what we have. And the beauty of it is that with this mixing structure, no adaptation of standard diesel engines is needed. so the existing infrastructure can be used. So I think this is the preferred option for most of the markets because it does two things. It shows you what the product can do and it adds value to already existing products. However, you can also look at a 100% pure product. There are bigger benefits on the emission front because it reduces it. But we need to adapt the vehicles and create a separate distribution system. So for certain parts of the world, this could be very applicable, especially the ones where you have high levels of pollution. Let me then try and show you a couple of numbers here to put it into context. First of all, you will notice that there is no sulfur comparison because there is no comparison. There is no sulfur. So that's one of the main things you get out of this process. It's very powerful. So what I've tried to show here is a bit on some of the other indicators, on the other emissions. And as you can see, there is something called CEN 96, which is basically the standard European diesel fuel introduced in '96. And then two sets of limitations. Euro 3, which is applicable to the current diesel engine, and Euro 4, which is anticipated to become applicable in the next wave of reductions. In general, it's quite a bit better. I have to make one remark. If you look, for example, at the reduction of nitrogen oxide emissions, it looks not too significant, but to be honest, that's because we've already applied the advanced Euro 3 engines. If you compare it with some of the existing engines around the world, the improvements are very significant. Now, if I home in a little bit on this product, I would like to try this a little bit of a demonstration. What we did is we got some kerosene, some kero, both the SMDS product from the Bintulu plant, essentially, and some kerosene, normal kerosene. And I would like to show you a little bit about the burning properties of it, if and when it works. The one on the far side is the SMDS one. It certainly has a higher flame point. And if you turn up the other one to the same height, you will see what the difference is. And that's sort of what I mean by it might be useful in polluted cities. It's quite remarkable. The product shows itself. Okay, let me not distract too much from what I was saying. If I try and home in on the South American market at the moment, just to give you a bit of a feel for the scale, a typical plant of this 75,000 would make, let's say, 45,000 barrels per day of gas oil. Now it's a bit tunable, so it depends on your process, how you fine-tune it. But if you compare it to the South American market, which is 1.7 million barrels per day, there's quite a bit of room for the product. Shell has plans worldwide for approval for 4 such plants over the next 10 years, various locations around the world, which we're looking at. So basically what this Shell middle distillate synthesis process can do is to help local regions improve air quality. I must say for now, volumes are insufficient to significantly change larger areas. Alternatively, or in addition, volumes are certainly bigger and can be supplied by most other alternative fuels in the medium term. 2 more slides I would like to show you. First, something on some of the benefits apart from the extremely clean products which we've seen demonstrated. On the social front, the gas to liquids plants, especially the ones we're thinking about, create jobs and value which actually higher than LNG on a per million cost intake basis. There are big opportunities for local downstream investments. I've mentioned, for example, the synergies with the power generated, but also many more can be thought of. It's a strategic source of transportation fuels, and two more headings are on the economic front. It's complementary to LNG as a monetization option with similar economics, because it's targeting a different market. And these days, in terms of economics, as I've tried to show you, it's certainly very competitive. There is a portfolio risk diversification aspect related to it, with accelerated gas monetization and possibly exchange impacts. On the environmental front, well, products are ultra clean. They really are, zero sulfurs and aromatics. They are expected to be equivalent or better than refinery system for greenhouse gas emissions on a total life cycle basis. I've heard a lot of comments made to this regard. There's a study ongoing with Pricewaterhouse. This is the expected outcome, which will be released later. Final picture I would like to share with you, maybe GTL is an alternative to LNG. If I look at it, then an LNG train or a process is really a process. It's a chain of things. You have an LNG plant. You need to ship the product. It goes ashore in specified parts of the world. You regasify. You get your product. And Shell know, we and Shell do have these installations, and they are excellent. But as I tried to show, next to it, complementary, we have the SMDS, the gas to liquids plant. It has more of an unconstrained market. You have a local aspect to it, where you have the plant with all its synergies and add-ons. And then in terms of products, they can be flexibly transported over the world, depending on markets, spot term, and then locally distributed. So as I've tried to show you, we're convinced, and we want to move ahead with SMDS as a viable and economically viable alternative to LNG. And with that, I thank you for your attention.
Bueno, gracias Marco. Las preguntas hemos decidido dejarlas para el final, después de la presentación de Rupert Mentz, así que yo le invitaría a Rupert a hacer su presentación. El señor Rupert Mentz es un ingeniero graduado de la Universidad de Pensilvania como ingeniero en petróleo y gas natural, y tiene un máster en ingeniería en Mineral Energy Management. La mayor parte de su carrera la desarrolló en el Ministerio de Energía de Trinidad y Tobago y se retiró del ministerio en 1998 como secretario permanente y gerente de operaciones de Arco Trinidad, y a partir de ese año comenzó a trabajar en BP Trinidad Tobago como un experto en LNG. Mr. Mentz fue también el negociador de la primera planta de LNG, ahí está instalada en Trinidad Tobago, y ahora está vinculado con la expansión de la capacidad de producción de LNG en Trinidad. Rupert.
Thank you, Hugo. 2 years ago, Trinidad and Tobago joined a small group of countries that produce and export liquefied natural gas, or LNG. In my presentation, which is entitled Developing an LNG Industry, the Trinidad and Tobago Experience, I will first review the background and give the context within which the industry was developed in Trinidad and Tobago. I will then give an overview of the industry as it exists today and briefly look at the possible growth potential of LNG in Trinidad and Tobago. Unfortunately, I have no samples of LNG. But, first of all, I'd like to give you an idea of where Trinidad and Tobago is. Now, most of you know where it is, but I think because of the importance of the geography in the whole Trinidad and Tobago story, I should spend just a few seconds on it. Trinidad and Tobago is the most southerly of the Caribbean chain of islands, and it's just about 11 kilometers off the east coast of Venezuela. Now, the country is about has a population of about 1.3 million people and an area of 4,828 square kilometers. Tobago itself has about 300 square kilometers. It has been a commercial oil producer since 1908, and it has relatively large gas and reserves. The gas reserves are found mainly on the east coast of Trinidad, where Enron, BP, British Gas, Texaco has reserves, and on the north coast of Trinidad, where British Gas, AGIP, and Petrotrin have reserves that are not yet being produced, but that will be produced soon. The reserve position is that we have, at least as noted at the end of 2000, at the beginning of 2000, 30 million TCF with an proved and probable, with an exploration potential of 50 to 70 million TCF. A reserve audit is about to take place, which will confirm these figures or give more confidence in them. The Trinidad and Tobago found a lot of gas reserves in the 60s and 70s while they were searching for crude oil. And a lot of these reserves were stranded in that there were no markets for them. In 1975, however, the government set up the National Gas Company, and they set up a task force to monetize these resources. The result was that there are a number of major gas consumers. Our production right now is about 1.5 million BCF per day, and most of the gas really goes into commercial activities. There's one natural gas liquid processing plant, LNG plant, 8 ammonia plants. One is currently under construction, 5 methanol plants, 1 additional plant being proposed. And in fact, we are the largest exporter of ammonia and methanol from any single site at the present time. What is significant about these plants is the role that government played as a major investor in the industry. Clearly, however, having looked at these plants, there was a need to diversify, and bearing in mind the large gas reserves, the country looked at LNG. Now, the first attempt to produce LNG was in about 1971. This attempt failed because the reserves weren't considered large enough at the time, and the government did not feel that they had enough gas to support domestic industry and also export. However, in 1992, Amoco, now BP Trinidad and Tobago, British Gas, Cabot LNG, which is now Tractobel, and the National Gas Company signed a memorandum of understanding to do a feasibility study into natural gas, into liquefied natural gas. This was done in 1993 by Kellogg, and it was funded by the 4 initial investors, and they were joined by Repsol. Repsol being the parent company of Energas, one of the companies to whom the output from the plant would be marketed. Now, the study was completed in 1994, and it confirmed that a single-train LNG plant was feasible. Moreover, the contractors indicated that a larger plant should be built, probably about 400 million cubic feet, rather than the 300 million cubic feet that they were asked to look at. Negotiations began in 1995, and the decision was made to build a 3 million metric ton per annum single train plant. Now, the present shareholdings in the Train 1 plant are as shown here, with BP and Kurdish should be BPTT, having 34%, British Gas 26, Repsol 20, Cabot 10, and National Gas Company 10. I'd briefly look at the industry, at least Swiss plant, and how it